Our presenter is Dr. Eli Ghassemian. He's coming to us via Zoom, and then we'll have also another, we have a second participant from DOE that I'll introduce after Dr. Eli Ghassemian's presentation.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Eli Ghassemian, Program Manager at the Office of Electricity. Regretfully, due to last-minute change of plan in the headquarters, I wasn't able to attend in person. Looking forward to that, but some high priority task came along and I wasn't able to attend. And I apologize for that, and apologize for the Energy Exemplar. And also would like to thank our host for letting us to go over some of the activity under the Office of Electricity. So I will briefly go over what we do in Office of Electricity, and one of our initiatives, one of the programs that I'm currently managing, North American Energy Resilience Model, NAERM. As you know, for the most part of the last century and a half, the grid has been built on a largely unchanged structure. Power plant, they're providing power, they're sending it to the consumers, and it was over excess, it was expensive, and things were going well. Then they start adding more into the system. They start adding more renewable in the system. Then the millions of customers, they start actually producing power and injecting back into the system. So grid becomes more and more complicated. In addition to that, we are getting a lot of information sensors, and all this information provides a lot of value to the operators and planners. Things that they didn't have, there were events in the past that they were getting them, and they didn't know what caused it. There was like misoperation, things like that. Now there are more information available to them to determine what caused it and how to mitigate this thing. In addition to that, we have events, threats, and climate changes is introduced extreme weather events and natural disaster. Event of the 1 in 100 years, it's happening more and more often, and the magnitude of all these events is larger than it used to be. So this is where we come in. These are emerging conditions that we categorize it into 3 different categories. Economic is driving changes in the supply, and these are some of the examples. Fuel used to generate electricity is changing. Location where electricity is generated is changing. Means by which electricity is generated and managed is changing. And load, the behavior of the load, and is also change over time. Power system characteristics are also evolving. Rotational inertia replaced by reduced stability and faster dynamics. IBRs has been the renewables and the power electronics has been replacing all the traditional way of producing the power. Transmission and distribution have become more adaptive. Operate-based grid management and offline analysis are not sufficient any longer. And, excuse me, operational context is also being challenged. Consumers, they're expecting a greater reliability and resiliency, and we are getting a lot of frequent and intense weather events. All these changes that cause this is what we're motivated the Office of Electricity. We are, the Office of Electricity goal is to work closely with the industry and other stakeholders to ensure the nation's most critical infrastructure is secure, reliable, and resilient to disruption. We are planning to do this through the research, development, and demonstration projects that drive grid technology evolution and provide the long-term transformational strategies to ensure the transmission distribution system can support evolving grid under all these conditions. As as you can see here, the office is divided into three different divisions: grid system and component, grid control and communication, and energy storage. All this green area, green writing part, this is what the office is concentrating on. We are concentrating on transmission system, the distribution system, and impact of distribution transmission system. We are working heavily on the grid scale storage, microgrid, and on the sensors and application of all these sensors, coming up with the application to utilize all these sensors. Our strategy is to make this happen is to work to advance the technology, and also work in collaboration with the policymakers and the market and the markets. Integrate that. We can't just develop the technology and sit and not do anything. We have to get the technology, has to be marketable and cheap enough so they can be used, and also we need to educate the policymaker to take advantage of this technology and see how to make it more cost effective. Now, what we are interested in as part of the office, there's a lot of challenges, and we're trying to we're not competing with the industry. We want to work with the industry. So what we're doing as part of the Office of Electricity, we identify what are the things that industry is not financially motivated to invest in, or they don't have enough, they don't have the expertise to attack the problem, to work on the problem. So what we're doing, we're looking at creating a partnership with the operators, with the industry, academia, national labs, and come up with the solution for getting a better understanding of the problem and coming up with a solution, and then build the capacity building and integrate the solution we are developing, we are coming up with. We communicate with the industry and try to find a good home for them. And this is what we have been doing in the past several years. One of the initiatives of Office of Electricity is North American Energy Resilience Model. And as you know, the U.S. energy infrastructure faces many hazards and threats. We are getting more cyber attacks, temperatures rising, electromagnetic EMPs, earthquake, wildfire, hurricanes, cold waves, flooding. All that, these are all these events, they are impacting different infrastructures. What we're trying to do is, as part of this program, to identify how different infrastructure, the interdependency between different infrastructures, and how these interdependency impact the electricity. Changes on the communication, how would that impact the electricity? Changes on natural gas, how would that impact the electricity? Transportation infrastructure, how would that impact electricity? In terms of, for example, you know that when you're trying to do a system restoration, transportation and availability of the roads to get the crew to the problem area is critical. And in order to, what we are doing, we're putting a model together for all these infrastructures, map them on the top of each other, so we know exactly if the pumping station at a certain area, it goes out of service, how would that, what are the impact of that on the electric power system, and vice versa. We have developed, we put a lot of layers of the data. We have a non-disclosure agreement with the multiple hundreds of different entities, getting this data in one place so the national labs, there are 8 national labs working on this thing, they can do this modeling and do this analysis. The goal is to see the impact. Also, as part of the North American Energy Resilience Model, we developed a platform that we can take advantage of. We don't want to go ahead and reinvent the wheel. We want to take advantage of what is available out there. One of the tools that we are using is Plexus. We don't need to go ahead and develop something like that. We take advantage of what is available. We take advantage of a lot of tools that are developed under tools and models that are developed under the national labs and also industry take advantage of all those, package them together to study this interdependency between different infrastructure, as well as managing and mitigating this uncertainty that all these changes in one infrastructure brings to the electric power system. This is how the NAERM is structured. We model the threats, and we have a model of the different infrastructures. Currently, we have the electricity, natural gas. We're almost pretty much working on the transportation, and communication is coming next. Then, on the top of that, we started adding the climate environmental models into this analysis. And what we're trying to get is we run the what-if scenario to predict the outages and the impact of that. We do a post-event analysis, we can do that. Operational planning options, what can we do in terms of reliability and resiliency enhancement? It used to be that we do a what-if scenario. What happens if there is an event coming, let's say there is an earthquake or it's a hurricane, how would that impact one area, one infrastructure, and how would that infrastructure impact the electricity sector? Now, that's not good enough for us anymore. We wanted to start doing we started doing a mitigation action. What kind of investment we need for this event doesn't happen anymore. Or what kind of mitigating action, immediate mitigating action that can be taken in order to alleviate some of the problems. NAERM is a federated tool, and it's using to do analysis with a wide range of the time scales and model fidelity. So we are working with we are using different tools for different time scales. And for example, on a protection system, we're using the CAPE and the PSSE from microsecond to minutes. We can do the study in that time frame. We can do a study for a transient analysis model. We're using Powerwall, PSLF, PSSE. We're using the cascading outages. There's a DCAT. DCAT is a Pacific Northwest National Lab tools, which has been tested by a couple of ISO RTOs and utilities. It's very promising. We're also doing contingency analysis, natural gas contingency analysis, and also resilient and reliable operation models. As part of that, we're using Plexos. Some of the use cases that we're looking at is, for example, the interdependency between the natural gas and electricity sector. We have a model of the natural gas for the entire US. We have a model and this is mapped into the model of the electricity sector. Now we can do a co-simulation between the natural gas and electricity sector to see what happens. And how would that one pumping station or one long gas pipeline, it goes out of service, or a gas storage is depleting and there is not enough storage, how would that impact the electricity sector, generation of power, and vice versa? Because it's a co-simulation. The co-simulation means if a pump station doesn't have a gas, it's not producing pumping gas into the pipeline. If there is no gas in a pipeline, there is no generation. If there is no generation, that would impact other part of the gas network. So it goes back and forth several times until we get to the equilibrium that nothing is changing. That's where the co-simulation stops. At the same time, we have done a study that's another use cases that we have for the wildfire. We can we use a lot of weather data and wildfire data which is available. Based on that, we did that in the FY21, looking at different area of California and how the wildfire is developing, and what will be the impact of that wildfire on the transmission side, on the electric power sector. We worked, the NAERM team worked with local utilities in the area to validate the results of that thing. And that was in the past. What we're doing, currently working on, is integrating the climate model so we can start predicting these things way in advance, instead of like a day or two before it happens to weeks before this happens. That's another thing that we are currently working on. Oh, as part of this, well, we also have other additional use cases. These additional use cases, like a cold wave, impact of the cold wave, and all that things. One of the relevant projects to this is using the as part of the expanded markets and transmission study project. What motivates this project is that there is a significant diversity in generation resources between Eastern interconnection and Western interconnection, that if leveraged, could significantly support system reliability and facilitate the economic integration of the clean energy resources, reduce the wholesale electricity market price, and serve as a hedge against the risk associated with extreme weather and drought. So as part of these projects, we start using the plexus. And these are some of the steps that the team has taken for this as part of these projects. It's an ongoing project. Let's see, how am I doing time? It's an ongoing project, and the result of the study will be published in the next few months. All I can provide you, without getting into the trouble, is that the results are very promising. Now, Plexus, as I said, it's one of the tools that we're using. I'm managing three different programs under Office of Electricity. North American Energy Resilience Model. Another program is the Protective Relay that covers project related to the power system protection. And the last one is what's called the Advanced Grid Modeling, which mainly concentrates on issues that the operator and planner face today and in the future. We're trying to get a better understanding of the issues and provide a path forward so the research fund can be invested in finding a solution. As part of this program, I have several projects. I'm currently managing a portfolio of close to 80 projects on an annual basis. I do have several projects which are related to what this summit is all about. One is configurable, customizable market models, stochastic unit commitment, economic dispatch. Well, we are applying exascale computing, pairing a math solver into the production cost models. We're using a higher fidelity network and unit commitment models. We are trying to link a PCM with natural threat models and wildfire, cold wave, and others, and expand its ability to easily inject and simulate big events that span multiple days in impact. And also adding a restoration recovery into modeling into PCM. All of these projects, these are some of them. They are at a different maturity level. And we are looking for a partnership. And as I said, Department of Energy, we're not in the business of developing software or anything like that. We develop capability and pass this to the industry, utilities, vendors. So anybody is interested in any of these aspects, please reach out to me, and you can find me here in the Office of Electricity. That's a link to our office, and I can provide you with any additional information that you need. And with that, my time is over. Well, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Gus. Our next speaker is Jordan Kislear. Jordan is with the U.S. Department of Energy also. He's in the Office of Carbon Management, and he's running Plexos and will be describing how carbon management technologies and evaluating them for particular deployment scenarios.
Thanks for the introduction. Again, my name is Jordan Kislear. I've been with the Department of Energy for 19 years now, and I started my career in fossil energy before it was fossil energy and carbon management, and began in the Office of Clean Coal. Over time, many things have changed since 2004. I still remember going to presentations of what is shale gas fracturing and how does it work? EPA has been constantly changing. We've gone through multiple administrations, and I have been privileged to be in a unique position where we both work on the research and development of carbon management technologies, but also we discuss the relevance of those technologies in achieving our policy goals in the United States. And a lot of what my office does is we focus heavily on the data and try to inform the conversation around carbon capture and storage, what its role is, how does it work, how can it be deployed, and where does it fit into the energy system as a whole. So today I'm going to give a really quick overview of fossil energy and what our current strategic priorities are, and then I'm going to go through a couple of our data products that we've developed over the last couple of years and how they kind of fit into everything, and then a little bit of talk about how we use Plexos and why we use Plexos. This is just a quick slide from our strategic vision that we published in October of 2022, outlining kind of the major focus areas of our office. Starting at the top, it's advancing carbon management approaches and working towards deep decarbonization. And that covers everything from point source carbon capture, carbon dioxide conversion into other materials and products, carbon dioxide removal, so things like direct air capture, which I talked about at Dallas, and I'll come back to that in a minute because we had some interesting results there, and then reliable carbon transport and storage, which ends up being a very large portion of what our office does. We also have a secondary office that works on sustainable energy resources, so that's starting to look at production of hydrogen, especially from natural gas and other fossil-based products, looking at critical minerals and methane mitigations. And they're also very active in the liquefied natural gas space, looking a lot at exports. They're actually the office that gets to approve all the LNG exports, which feeds back into the energy system as we start to look at how that affects natural gas pricing. And then finally, advancing justice, labor, and engagement, making sure that everybody is listened to, heard, and that we're taking all these equities into account whenever we do develop our projects. We received a significant amount of funding in the bipartisan infrastructure law, $6.5 billion just for carbon management projects over 5 years. And that includes the formation of regional direct air capture hubs, so getting companies to come together and look at the deployment in different grid scenarios, in different energy locations. A significant amount of funding for carbon storage validation and testing. So that's actually looking at subsurface geologic formations where we store the carbon dioxide, figuring out where they are, what's the injectivity, how to drill it, ownership rights, and all those kinds of things. Still some funding for just direct actually capturing carbon at power plants, and then some additional funding for rare earth materials. I think the mine of the future was the thing that was mentioned recently about how we can develop these materials for energy products in a sustainable manner. My office is Fossil Energy and Carbon Management 261. If I go through the whole stack of things, it's fossil energy and carbon management, and then carbon management, and then strategic engagement, and then systems, economic, and environmental analysis. So we're kind of all the way down at the bottom. Our office has three kind of major components to what we do. The first one is using modeling tools to look at the impact of policy changes on the U.S. energy system, specifically focused on CCUS, and I'll be talking a lot about the data that we're developing, and that'll come next in a few minutes. The second is assessing market conditions and analyzing the relative contribution of monetary policies, so particularly like 45Q tax credits and a whole bunch of the different provisions that go into the Inflation Reduction Act. How do we model them? How do we assess them? How do we actually look at the impact that it's having on the economy? And does it actually reach decarbonization? And that's been a real drinking from the fire hose the last couple of months. I mean, everybody wants to talk about it. And the difficult thing is that there's been this massive engagement on hydrogen over the last couple of years, but nobody's got hydrogen models quite yet. So we're starting to work towards that in some of the other work that we do. And then the last is providing information and assessing the industry response for regulations on the economy. So that's the other large portion of my job, which I've been very heavily engaged with EPA over the last couple of months as the new 111 rules came out. Making sure that the data was correct, making sure that we know what the costs of carbon capture are, making sure that hydrogen is well represented, and taking a look at all of these policies. Again, another shot at what our major efforts are. So cost estimation, which again I'll talk about in a minute. Life cycle assessment of technology, so cradle to grave estimates of what it actually, how much carbon is actually removed. Engagement with the Energy Information Administration, and they're the ones who run the National Energy Modeling System to produce their annual energy outlook. So we're really heavily ramping up our engagement with them and looking at the representation of CCS, including adding it at cement plants, better pipeline representations, direct air capture, and all kinds of other things. Production cost modeling, so Plexos is the main one that we use, and unfortunately because of the NEMS component that our office does, and because we're so heavily engaged with EIA, we're not an Aurora user, but we do want to make sure that we're running the right models that you guys are running. So, what are the ISOs looking at, and how do they assess the grid? What are utilities looking at? And we want to make sure that we're relevant in those conversations whenever we start to look at our data and we provide analysis that are coming out. The thing I mentioned earlier is when I was here in Dallas, I talked about modeling of direct air capture using Plexos. And when we did it, we were starting to look at 100% electricity run direct air capture. Something we found in some of our other models is that people are starting to prefer natural gas to run their direct air capture systems and not electricity. A lot of that is, and if I kind of think through the cycle, we started to see a lot more build out of not only wind and solar renewables and storage, but we also saw some expansion in natural gas combustion turbines and combined cycle units. So if you think through the stack, if you're doing direct air capture using 100% electricity, you would take natural gas, convert it to electricity with some efficiency, run it through a power line, and then go over to your direct air capture system and then convert it back into heat. So why don't we just use natural gas and just skip the entire chain? So we've kind of discovered that that's a little bit of a change in our thinking, and we have to really go back and rerun our models, which has been kind of a fun result that we've seen. So a couple of things that we've also developed over the last few years. The first is we've been working with NREL in developing a product called the Annual Technology Baseline. So it's a product that's used to inform electric and transportation sector analysis in the United States, and the goal is to use a consistent baseline and a robust set of assumptions so that all the technologies that are included in the document can be directly compared to each other. When I first started working at the Department of Energy, it was very difficult because different offices were using different tools and estimation methodologies, and you might have someone using corporate finance and someone else using project finance, different discount rates, all kinds of things, and it was very hard to compare, and it ended up being, we always joke that it was kind of a liar's game of who could get the best set of assumptions to get the lowest cost of electricity, and then you win. You get all the deployment in all of your models. So we've been working with NREL and making sure that everybody's on a consistent basis so that if you pick up a document, it has the same set of assumptions so that everything can be compared so that people can actually make decisions using the correct information. And this is information that we work with the Energy Information Administration, and when they work with their annual energy outlook, all of this is kind of integrated so that we have the best data available. We've just gotten some of our new data into the most recent ATB. I think all the numbers are now updated to June 2022 dollars, which, if anybody's been paying attention, inflation has been on the front of everybody's mind in the last couple of years, I guess. Second, as part of that, the data that we've developed is from the National Energy Technology Laboratory's Cost and Performance Baseline. So this is kind of a subset of the ATB in a way, but this is a product that we've developed which goes to vendors of carbon capture technologies and power plant technologies and does a pretty robust cost analysis for the deployment of these technologies. So we actually will go to Mitsubishi and get vendor quotes for their new solvent technologies or their turbines, and we'll put together a full Aspen model of these plants and then do a full cost analysis of what these technologies do. So the interesting thing here is that when we started this was actually built for research and development purposes. So we wanted to see what happens when you improve your solvents in your carbon capture technology. How does it affect the cost? And what should our cost targets be? And what's relevant? What's a reasonable thing to shoot for whenever we're doing our research and development? Over time, others started picking this up because it became one of the better resources for looking at CCS costs and being able to compare them. We then got contacted by EPA when they were developing their regulations and looking at the use of CCS, or requirement in some cases, in new power plants. And this data started to make its way into those projects and products. And we want to make sure that it's as robust as possible. So we do have the most recent version of this is the revision 4A that we've developed, and it is out on NETL's website. There's a link in here, and if anybody wants to access it, it's still a great resource to see, what are the costs, how do the project development costs impact everything, where are the O&M costs, and what does it look like in a real-world setting. The next two products are specific to the subsurface and the CO2 portion of what we work with. So for anyone that doesn't know, carbon capture and storage, when the carbon dioxide is captured, it has to be put somewhere. And up until a couple of years ago, the largest component or the largest use of CO2 in the United States has been for enhanced oil recovery. So essentially, once you've done primary oil production, you inject CO2 into the oil, which makes it less viscous, and then you're able to produce more oil. And when we started CCS, it was, okay, this is a no-regrets policy. We're gonna capture CO2 from a power plant, we're gonna sell it to an oil field, and then they're gonna produce more oil, and there's gonna be a cost transaction there, and everybody wins. And then oil prices tanked. So if I've learned anything over 14, 19 years, it's that change is constant, and you can never bank on anything. So now we're looking more at saline storage sites. So these are formations that are 8,000 to 10,000 feet below the surface, extremely high salinity, porous sandstone formations where you can inject the carbon dioxide, it will dissolve into the water, react with the minerals in the formations, and it will stay permanently stored in the subsurface. And that's, I think, about half of our program now is dedicated to researching how to do that safely, making sure that we inform the regulatory process, and knowing just all the ins and outs of how you actually go about and do these processes. So to that end, we have two other products here. One is the CO2 transport cost model. So as part of our DEMS development, and we're looking at expanding this into the Plexus development as well, it's not just power plants that are capturing carbon dioxide, it's industrial facilities, some of the hydrogen production going from natural gas steam methane reformers, looking at capturing CO2 from those sites, direct air capture, and others. All we feel that and have assessed that the best way to do this is a combined transportation network of CO2. So putting everything into large trunk lines of trunk line pipelines, and then delivering them to the sites as needed, whether that's enhanced oil recovery sites or saline storage sites. And I apologize to Ali, but this is just another layer on top of the United States. So now we've got electricity, we've got natural gas pipelines, we've got CO2 pipelines, we've got so many layers that we have to look at and assess and optimize across all of this. This first one is the CO2 transport cost model, which does look at the pipelines, tries to figure out what's an optimal pipeline size, given the particular flow rates and everything going into it. This one is also freely available on our website. It's an Excel-based model. You can do point-to-point CO2 pipelines, and then you can kind of real-time play with the parameters and see what your relevant costs are, find your break-even price for transporting the CO2, pipeline lengths, and all of those different components. And then the second one is the saline storage cost model. So as I mentioned, the subsurface storage that we have, we've done a significant amount of development working with state energy agencies, state geological surveys, companies such as like Schlumberger, actually assessing the subsurface storage of the CO2. And we've put all of that data together. It's actually called the National Carbon Storage Atlas. And we've built some tools on top of that. So this one is the saline storage cost model that looks at the injectivity of CO2 into these formations, and then it will start to figure out how the plume actually moves in the subsurface. You can kind of get a feel for the number of injection wells, the number of monitoring wells, how much CO2 you can put in these formations, the lifetime, where they are, and then you can look at cumulative versus break-even prices of CO2, and all that stuff comes together, again, in a nice graphical interface of an Excel file to get your hands around what the actual costs of storage are, which I think they're somewhere around about 10% of the project costs are in the actual injection of CO2 in the subsurface. And then beyond that, there's a lot of long-term monitoring and storage that also needs to be considered in all of these things. But the point and purpose of all of these products is to make sure that analysts such as you guys have the best information available specifically for carbon management technologies. Now, whether that's the cost of carbon dioxide removal, or what does it take to retrofit a new or an existing power plant with carbon capture and storage, or how much does it cost to transport the CO2, what do the pipelines look like? We just want to make sure that we're informing all of those conversations because CCS is still a relatively new technology without a lot of deployments, and it can be difficult to see the real cost of these technologies when we don't have actual operating plants. But there are a lot of tax credits out there, and there's a lot of developers really looking at how they can build out these systems and what is the role within decarbonization policies that we have is really what we're trying to accomplish at the end of the day. So I'm going to stop there. I think we still got a couple of minutes left for questions, and I believe Ali is still online. So
I'm still here.
I have a question. Let's assume, can you take the flue gas of a gas-fired or coal-fired power station and go directly into carbon capture storage? Could I avoid having to build an FGD, a scrubber, or pass it through NOx control? Can I go directly to capture?
how much time do I have? If you're talking about an existing coal-fired power plant or an existing natural gas power plant, no. A coal power plant is about, I think it's 13% CO2 in the flue gas, so you've still got a lot of air that's going through the system. And then natural gas is even lower, it's about 7%. So it's just a little bit too dilute. And it's a complicated question because we are looking at, or have been looking at, some technologies like oxycombustion, where you just burn your natural gas or your coal with straight oxygen, and you recycle your CO2, so that on the back end you just have CO2. The second part of that is EPA does have regulations for how you can put CO2 in the subsurface. For anyone curious, it's the Underground Injection Control Class 6 program, and it will outline everything that there is to know about the quality of your CO2, the impurities, how much water can be in it, how much sulfur, and all of those other things before you actually put it in the subsurface.
Okay. Is it hard to separate CO2 out of that flue gas? Is that an expensive process?
When I started my career, carbon capture was a very small portion of the Innovations for Existing Plants program, and it has just grown to encompass the entire program. So there are specialty solvents, sorbents, membranes, and all kinds of other technologies to separate out the gas. It takes a lot of energy, and that's really the problem, is that it's extremely energy intensive to take a small portion of your gas stream and then separate it out so that it's 100%. And not only that, CO2 is, we're kind of spoiled as humans that when you take carbon and combine it with oxygen, you get a lot of heat. And it's a very efficient process, but that also means that CO2 is a very inert molecule. So it's kind of difficult to actually separate it out because you've got to do something to chemically pull it out and then get it to its own stream.
Any other questions? Yes, Harry.
Hey, this is Hari from Mitsubishi Power. Just one thing I wanted to add to what you said, like nobody has modeled hydrogen yet. We have Mitsubishi Power, so yeah, we should talk. And of course, thanks to Plexos, It's an awesome tool. You can efficiently model hydrogen systems. In fact, yeah, I don't want anyone to walk out of this room thinking you can't do hydrogen modeling. So yeah, we should talk.
I should have said that a year ago because there are now a lot of hydrogen models. So we've also got one that we're running with NEMS as well. But yes, there are hydrogen models now, so I apologize I misspoke for that.
Another question?
Also, Ali is here online as well if you want to ask some NAERM questions.
Well, to either of you, hi, Dan Robichaud with MISO. Could you say more about the direct air capture powered by natural gas?
Sure. We've been working with companies like Carbon Solutions. I think I can't remember all the names of the companies, but essentially it's literally pulling CO2 out of the atmosphere. And it works very similar to what we're doing on power plants, where you use some kind of solvent to bind to the CO2 and then release it in other areas. But once you get to direct air capture, you're talking 400 parts per million that you need to separate out of the atmosphere. So it's very energy intensive. But under the BIL, we do have funding available for some demonstration projects. And for 45Q, there are credits. I think it's $185 per ton of CO2 if it's removed through direct air capture. So we're seeing more companies that are kind of pulling new and novel processes to try to minimize the energy requirement for these projects.
Right. Oh, thank you. And just curious, though, given that the process is powered by natural gas, is there any data as to the overall net efficacy of carbon removal?
Yes, and we can talk later because I can give you a couple of reports that we've worked on, but usually when the natural gas is burned to provide the process heat, you're also capturing the CO2 generated in that process. So we are looking at the life cycle of that as well, because we also want to account for the natural gas extraction to run those. So we're looking at the kind of full gamut of the system.
Yeah. Thank you.
Just one last comment from Ali. Ali, how do you interact with like the regional ISOs, or is that part of the program, or just curious?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. We do work with NERC a lot, and NERC has a direct contact with the ISOs, so that's how we get ISO on board with some of our activities. We currently have several projects with the different ISOs, we have one on the New England gas pipelines and interdependency between electricity and the gas on the New England, and studying what the scenario is during this coming winter. At the same time, we do have other projects with the California ISO, Midwest ISO, and other. Usually, this is done through our connection with NERC and also the national labs. They do know people over there, and they reach out to them, they work with them before, and they provide them with some of the capability we have, get them interested in the area. But at the same time, we also have work with NREC and on a regional basis, and working with the regions.
Thank you. Well, thank you both. Very nice presentations.
Thank you very much.